think we need to create opportunities for people to come into organizations. So when you look around the table, it could be at COEG, it could be at World Federation, you still see the same faces around. And that's not good. When you're the youngest councillor ever in the history of WF and the youngest Secretary General ever, and I had this rule, I'll call them uncle outside, but on the table they're all bi.
How did that go down? Khoja politics is not for the faint-hearted.
We have such brilliant women. How many of them are really in top-level leadership roles?
Some people may think that you need to have special talents to get involved.
And if you have an opportunity to live, an opportunity to breathe, we need to give back.
In our history of Khoja, we've had to move and look after ourselves and be in survival mode.
I think in the Shia community, we as Khojas, I feel, and I may be wrong, but I feel we are the number one community. But I think there are times with our community that there are some internal forces that sometimes create strife. If we are strong, I feel the Shia community is strong.
In your role as the Secretary General of the World Federation, what was the most controversial experience that you had to go through? Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to the Khoja Connection podcast, a brand new exciting podcast by COEG, growing through conversations. And I am your host, Durain Hiriji. Today, our guest is Shan E Abbas Hassam. Shan E Abbas needs no introduction in our Khoja community. He's a prominent member of the worldwide community of the Khoja community. And he's the ex-Secretary General of the World Federation, the current member of the Birmingham EC. He's got his fingers in many pies. He's also a board of the KLF, which is the Khoja Leadership Forum, a worldwide organization as well. He's a businessman, business entrepreneur, a family man, a father, mashallah. And Shan, thank you so much for being in this Khoja Connection. It's the new podcast of COEG, the Council of the European Jamaat. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Durain. It's my honor and my pleasure to be here. Thank you so much.
So I'm just going to go right into it. And I was wondering, when I looked and I spoke to you about when you actually started in the community, you were just a few months above 18, I think. You just came out of childhood almost into adulthood. Yeah. And you went straight into the World Federation. Yeah. I mean, this is an age where people are normally thinking about their career, they're thinking about financial stability, getting married, things like that. But you decided you wanted to dedicate your first few years of adulthood to the community, the World Federation specifically. What was going through your mind at the time?
So I remember I was at university. I was maybe 18 or 19 in my second year. And, you know, in university, you do have spare time. It's not all work. A lot of people are going out and enjoying themselves. And I saw, and a few friends of mine actually, people like Zain Sikafi and Zaid Shalshi back then, a few Iraqi brothers, we saw there was tremendous issues with orphans in Iraq. And we were talking about it one day when we were out. And we said, well, why don't we go and collect money for them? So it was a question of which charity we could do this by. And we saw on the tube station people collecting at tube stations. So I thought, wow, this is a wonderful idea. There must be, 20, 30, 40 tube stations around the country per day. I don't know how much is collected, but this would be a really good idea. Why don't we collect for a charity? And I knew so I had a choice of different charities that we could work with. And of course, World Federation has such a great reputation. And I knew in World Federation, Dr. Hassam was the president, a Brummy, and I was living in London, but as a student, but I knew him very, very well. And I knew Mohsen Uncle Dharamsi and Yasin Rahim, who I met later on. And Mohsen Uncle had been at Camp COEG, where actually I gained so much experience. So it was in Sweden camp. I knew Mohsen Uncle really, really well. So I approached Mohsen Uncle and said, look, how about we collect money for these Iraqi orphans? Something good that we can do. I have the time. And I remember we organized it. We even had a base at the apartment that we lived in. And that's how I got involved with WF. It was more about aid and about helping other people. And I could see that, people were collecting money for different countries, but I felt Iraq wasn't being collected for. The orphan situation was really bad. We collected, I think we we raised 50K in our first tube station collection, and then we did a few others after then. So that's really how I started with WF.
Yeah. I mean, it's a very young age. 18, people are a bit selfish at that age. They want to build themselves first.
Yeah.
But you're talking about, thinking about orphans and helping them. I mean, it's a commendable, venture to go into.
Yeah.
I mean, what was it about orphans that was, that lit you up? Was it something that affected you, impacted you? What was it that really was the first step?
So I could see on the TV screens the suffering that they were going through. And I just felt like we have so much resources in the West, and it's going to a lot of good organizations, like Save the Children was the one I saw at that point. I was like, I could help save the children, or I could help, our own community, or the extension of our own community. And then it was really about which charity is best to work with. So there was LFT, there was World Federation, there were a few Iraqi charities at the time. And because I knew Mohsen Uncle so well, I was like, no, I can trust him. If we raise funds, these will reach Iraq. And I remember sitting with Mohsen Uncle and going through that in some level of detail.
Wow. And when you then went into it and you started making that impact and that change,
yeah.
What was the feeling?
I think it was a great feeling. It was like, look, I'm a student. I'm studying in the day, and then in the evening, rather than going out, everybody else was doing, I was spending a lot more time doing charity work, and I felt good about that. So I think it gave me a good kind of inner feeling. Maybe the endorphin release that I probably needed at that time.
Right, because that's true. A lot of youngsters at the moment, if it's not studying, if it's not family life, then they would perhaps venture into things that are not necessarily good, but you actually put your energy into something that was impactful, something where you're giving back. So, I mean, what would you say to a 18, 19-year-old maybe, or even a bit older, who really has that drive, but maybe is scared? Because, to be honest, going into a charity like that, such a, big charity as well, it's a little bit daunting. It's a bit overwhelming, isn't it, for a young soul?
It is. I think it is. I think so. There's a couple of things. I think we need to create opportunities for people to come into organizations. So when you look around the table, it could be at COEG, it could be at World Federation, you still see the same faces around, and that's not good. I always believe, when the time's over, it's time to get off. When the curtain falls, it's time to get off the stage. New people have to come forward, and we have to have new people coming into our organizations to make sure that they're vibrant, that they're alive. So there's partly the organizations need to be forward thinking of bringing new people in. At that time, we had people like Dr. Hassam, Yasin Rahim, Mohsen Uncle, and actually a crop that came through the COEG Sweden group ended up coming into WF and COEG. And I remember people like Shabadala and Ali Panju, Hussein Panjwani, so many other people that went through the Camp COEG are now very active in the community because they got a young taste of community work. They built up relations with people who are in organizations already. We need to do that. I think in terms of talking to young people, a lot of them will be afraid of the politics of organizations. Yeah, and I don't blame them. I've been through it. I'm sure we'll probably discuss some of it at some point. Whether it be today or some other point. But I think people need to know philosophically that life is not always about them or their families. There's much more to do. And if you have an opportunity to live, an opportunity to breathe, we need to give back. And we need to give back to humanity, whether it be our community, whether it be the wider Shia organization or Shia communities, or whether it be humanity in general. I think we need to feel that and have that kind of philosophy in our lives.
Yeah. And you mentioned that the youngsters today are scared of politics.
Yeah.
I mean, Khoja politics is not one for the faint-hearted.
Absolutely.
And unfortunately, we have quite a bit from a local level, a wider level. As an 18, 19-year-old entering that world of politics, what's one thing you wish you would have known before entering that?
So I think when I first came into WF, it was purely for aid work. And then I got roped into more work. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I became the youngest councillor. I think I was 21 years old, elected as a councillor. And I became an assistant secretary general. I think I was doing both at the same time, if I was not mistaken. So I got roped in very young. And I think I was very naive at that time. But I'm grateful for those opportunities because I learned so much. I think for young people, I think it is really important to get involved in our organizations. I think they add such a different dimension, such a different viewpoint, especially today because their challenges are so different to when we were 18, 19, 20, 21 years old. I think the world has really moved on with things like AI, things like social media. And I think those who are older in leadership positions, they mean well, but they wouldn't understand all their challenges. So we do need a very good young representation. And I personally don't believe in just having a youth desk or a youth wing. I think the youth need to be as office bearers. They need to be as counselors. They need to have a seat around the table. And maybe we should do, almost protectionist ways to make sure that we have a minimum number of youth and women in our organization. And I feel we are marginalizing our ladies and our youth. Like, we have such brilliant women. That's 50%, maybe more of our population. But how many of them are really in top level leadership roles? It's just a question really to be put out there.
No, that's a really good question. But again, what's stopping women and what's stopping youngsters from coming to the table? What's stopping them from really getting involved?
So I think partly perception. Maybe they have a perception of politics, or perception that they are coming from they're coming from a background where maybe their viewpoints won't be accepted. So there's probably some perception, some, you could say, false beliefs that they may have. But at the same time, I think the community organizations need to be cognizant of that and really find the diamonds out there and find people to come in and run the organizations and develop the organizations, not just operationally, but strategically as well.
Yeah. And to be honest, I think some people may think that you need to have special talents to get involved. Is that a false belief?
Yeah.
Could you just be anybody and come and help out in your local Jamaat or at a European level or even at the world level?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a limited belief. I think people might say, well, what value do I add? Or they may feel imposter syndrome, that is this really, do I deserve a space around the table? I think to people like that, the message is simple, like, you can add so much value. A mother can add so much value, in a leadership body because she sees things from a different angle. A young person at university can add so much as well because, again, they have a different angle. And I think our community is so brilliant and amazing because it is so vibrant, because we have so many different points of view. And when you have that collectively, it just brings such beautiful results.
You mentioned imposter syndrome, and I want to just ask you about your imposter syndrome and your self-doubt.
Yes.
When you started, in fact, when you were even into it and, delivering projects.
Yeah.
Did you at any point feel, I can't do this, I'm not going to be able to deliver this project? Talk to me about that.
Yeah, I think all the time, to be honest. So I remember when I was, Assistant Secretary General, I must have been in maybe 21 years old. I can't remember exactly. I believe Yasin Rahim was the SG. It was myself and Mohammed Riaz. And it was like, wow, he was delivering the newswire and I was managing these boards or working with the boards. I was like, these board chairmen are so much older than me. So at that point, I felt, wow, this is. I felt a bit of imposter syndrome. I think, when you're the youngest councillor ever in the history of WF and the youngest Secretary General ever, you're like, wow, I'm very young. And of course, they're all uncles. And I had this rule. I'll call them uncle outside, but on the table, they're all Bhai or Ben. I don't create that pedagogic relationship on the table. So when we're at an executive council meeting, I would never say to someone uncle.
How did that go down?
Some of them afterwards would be like, but you just call me Bhai and I call me uncle. They felt a bit confused.
Okay.
But I think they would understand that, we are equals on the table. But then, of course, outside, we're not, because they're an elder and they deserve that level of respect. So many people, I call them Murabbi, and they find it, they think I'm being endearing. But actually, they do deserve these titles because they are elder to us.
Yes, absolutely. And those imposter syndromes and those self-doubts, how did you actually encounter that? How did you deal with it?
I think I just kept myself busy and didn't really think about it too much. I just got on with it. I think
went for it.
It went for it. I think there were some tremendously large projects that we used to do that I was like, wow, are we really doing this? I remember the Yemen rescue. I mean, that was just a huge project.
Wow.
That was rescuing, I can't remember how many, maybe 400 or 450 Yemenis out of Yemen and then resettling them around the world. And I led that project. I was no longer Secretary General. In fact, I remember I was burnt out from being Secretary General. So I told Dr. Mouladina that, look, you need to give me a break. week and, I'm coming out. And I wouldn't even wait till the conference. I was like, no, now I need to come out. I need to spend time at home. I remember that was when Maliha was very young. I mean, it was difficult as Secretary General when you have kids being born in your house and you need a break. And I took that break, and then we had the Yemen rescue just 3-4 months later. And I had such a good relationship with Aid and Jamal. I felt I couldn't let them down when they were emailing me personally and calling me that we need to get out, help us. So I went to Dr. Molly and said, okay, I've come out as Secretary General, but I need to come back to lead the Yemen rescue. And I remember that was a tremendously large project. And I felt, I'm still in my 20s. What are we doing here? Like, wow. This is, and it was dealing with people a lot older, very strong personalities around the table. But alhamdulillah, we managed to get the project done.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, of course, you have that willingness and that desire to help and to give back, especially the Yemen project, which I remember was quite you were quite busy during that time. We hardly saw you during that time. And you have a family. You're a family man. You have a wife, 2 beautiful girls. How did you deal with that? How did that impact your family life, impact the quality time you would spend with them?
I mean, I think it was really hard. I mean, the Yemen project, I remember, I don't think I worked properly for 3 to 4 months. I think my boardroom in the office turned into an operation command and control center where I had members of paid WF staff in there. Wow. And we were really tracking everybody and where they were and all sorts. I think if you remember, obviously you're my sister-in-law, so you remember, went to Center Parks one of the weekends, and we were there for 4 or 5 days. And I don't think you guys saw me. I was just constantly on and off phone calls. So it got a bit too hectic. I think it's not a regret, but I do look back and I say I did a lot for the community at a very, very young age. And, it's not me sacrificing, it's also my wife sacrificing and also my daughters. And I love the fact that I'm less involved now because I am spending much more time with the kids and they need that time and I enjoy that time as well.
Yeah. And to be honest, as a father, maybe you didn't spend that time with them, but they could see you giving back. So in that sense, you were probably an amazing role model where they knew what you were doing. You were helping other families. And, there's a concept in our religion where when you give, you get back, right? When you give in the way of Allah. So now you're getting back, in terms of time, in terms of quality. And time is another thing I wanted to talk to you about. I mean, people in your position, they give their time. Time is such a valuable thing today, especially in the Western world where you pretty much have to do everything yourself. Yeah. So, wow, how did you manage your, you have obviously work time. I know during Yemen time, it was obviously different circumstances, but otherwise you had life at home, life with WF, life with business as well, because you have to put the bread on the table as well.
Yeah. I mean, even then, and I still do work at least 10 to 11 hours a day. I'd still do the hours, even when I was Secretary General, and try and fit it in between, which is hard and a real challenge. I think now the benefit I have is, although I'm putting the hours into work, I'm getting more hours at home, and that makes a real difference, I think, to me. Yeah. And I even whatever I'm doing at Birmingham Jamaat, it doesn't take many hours at all, and I really enjoy that.
So in your role as the Secretary General of the World Federation, what was the most controversial story or the most controversial experience that you had to go through?
So I think I did 8.5 years as World Federation Secretary General. I enjoyed, you could say, almost every moment apart from the end. The end was exceptionally difficult. So that was to do with the election of whoever would come after us. So obviously we had Anwar Uncle as president, and then it was a question of whether he goes for a second term or not. Personally, I didn't want to come as Secretary General for the first term, but because of the relationship we have with Anwar Uncle, my dad has, I have, I didn't want to let him down. And I felt that having been SG at that point was maybe 5 or 6 years, that I could stretch one more term. And I know my wife wasn't happy about it, but I said to Anwar Uncle, okay, I'll help you on this one, but only one term. So when it came to the second term, Anwar Uncle was not sure whether to stand or not. And I was like, please, Anwar Uncle, I think, I've done 8.5, 9 years as Secretary General. Maybe you continue. And I don't know if he didn't want to continue. I think also he had done a lot. He had been chairman of AFED for 3 terms, chairman of Dar es Salaam Jamaat, I think 2 terms before that. So he had like a whole stint of Dar es Salaam Jamaat, AFED and WF. So I think he had become pretty tired. And so, had he stood, no one else would have stood. I'm pretty confident. In his first term, no one stood against him. But because it was open, suddenly lots of people stood. And if I'm not mistaken, 4, 5, maybe 6 people stood for this election. And it became absolute chaos. It became chaos because you had lots of people in different camps. You had a lot of acidity which came out, which we couldn't see before. Like, we used to have excos, and it was such a jovial, brotherly atmosphere. And we were trying to create that atmosphere. But as soon as this election happened, and some things maybe some people felt didn't go right, it absolutely went crazy. You had these crazy WhatsApps going on. And I really didn't enjoy that period. And that's why we resigned and left in the end. It just became too much.
Wow. I mean, I think that's going back to what we were saying about why people then don't want to join.
Yeah.
Because I think as a community, we actually have gone through a lot of trauma.
Yeah.
You know, we've migrated a lot in our history of Khoja. We've had to move and look after ourselves and now, you know, be in survival mode. And so then, you know, restarting again in different countries, it's been a challenge for our Khoja community.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of this mindset has remained, right? Like, you want to keep preserving your culture, preserving your yourselves. And in that process, I think sometimes we forget that we're here actually just to elevate, to get to the next level.
Yeah.
We need to have a collaboration, like a collaborative mindset.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
I'm sure that's what you tried to create during that time.
Absolutely. I mean, I think in the Shia community, we as Khojas, I feel, and I may be wrong, but I feel we are the number one community. We're the most organized. We have the highest average GDP. We're exceptionally education focused. We are absolutely brilliant. But I think there are times with our community that there are some internal forces that sometimes create strife. Like, this election didn't need to be like that. We had a rule book. Yes, some may not have gone absolutely well, but ultimately someone was elected by a huge majority. Right? And then they went to court, and they found the court also said it's fine. Like, the process was almost okay, or it's fine. And had it not even been fine, they still would have ended up with the same result. So that whole period was an absolute, complete, total waste of time. And in that, many people got burnt and may not be interested in giving to the community anymore. But when you have such a beautiful, wonderful, vibrant community, our focus shouldn't be about individual people, individual groups. It needs to be the collective. And like, if we are strong, I feel the Shia community is strong. And we add tremendous value to the Shia community.
Absolutely. If you had to do it again, how differently would you do it? Or is there anything you would do differently?
You know, I don't think I have any regrets, but I would do things differently. I think rather than maybe I think I enjoyed. So I came into World Federation very much into relief of poverty. That was my initial drive and motivation. It was to help others. It may be in Iraq, it may be our Khoja community in India, in Africa, and so on. Very passionate about that very early on. But as time got on, I got more passionate about Tabligh. I really feel our biggest challenge is going to be our children and their children, whether we can keep them on that straight path, you know, living in the West in the future. I think there are tremendous challenges, you know, now facing our community. And I think really my number one focus is to ensure that we maintain our internal Tabligh. It's great what we do on the external relief. It's amazing what we do on external Tabligh around the world, like World Federation works around the world. There are many charity donors on their own that work around the world. That's wonderful. But really our future, our Tablighi future, I think that's a significant challenge, I think. And that's where really my focus is now. And that's why, for example, I sit on ICARE, the board of ICARE, which is the World Federation Research Institute. So I sit on that board really because I'm passionate about this topic. I want to ensure we're looking at all these different topics and ensuring our young people have the right information, you know, for all the various challenges that they have. In Birmingham, I sit on the reciters committee and I lead the committee because I really want to ensure we get the best reciters in Birmingham so that our community is engaged. And I think community engagement and our religious identity and thinking into the future is very, very critical.
So you're still very much involved within the community on different fronts, maybe local levels and things like that.
Absolutely.
So you still want to give back, even though you've gone through that journey.
Yeah.
You were 8.5 years in the...
Yeah, 8.5 years as Secretary General, I think 3 years as a councillor. I think involved between, I think it was 18 to 36, something like that. So a huge portion of my life I was involved in World Federation. I think many people only know me for World Federation, which is great. But yeah, I'm still involved involved. I'm still very, very much involved. I think there are many regions and jamaats that I help and support in the background. There's many scholars and speakers that I liaise with and push them because I have certain things that I want them to really bring up. But it's more on the tabligh side now, I think, more than anything else.
The whole experience from the age of 18 to or 19 to now you are approaching your 40s, alhamdulillah. How did that change you as a person? Because it must have been quite, there are times when you must have been really disappointed, maybe even wanting to leave, depressed, disgusted. And then other times when you were like, no, I'm here, I want to go on. How did you evolve and how did that change you as a person?
I think it's a really good question, quite a deep question, Lorraine. I think a couple of things. First, I think I was more of a doer and now more of a thinker. So before I'd be like, yeah, let's do this project, let's do that project. Now I'm like, why are we doing that project? What's the benefit? What's the drawback? And more long-term thinking now. Whereas I think then I was more, let's get on with it and get a task done. I think before I was a bit more naive on the politics. Now I'm much more clued up on politics. So I look at things, rightly or wrongly, I look at things from all angles. When before I would just take it on face value. But I think now I probably love the community even more. Than when I started. Because at that time it was okay, I want to collect money for orphans in Iraq, or I want to do this particular thing. Now I just see how amazing we are. I mean, look at, we're a community of 140 jamaats. Every jamaat you go to, you almost feel welcome. It's amazing that you could travel almost anywhere in the world and go to one of our centers. And then you look at the deep connections that we have as Khojas. I mean, I don't know if we know how lucky we are as Khojas because, of all the efforts that all the past leaders have done. I mean, we go to mosque, someone's paid for it. Someone had worked hard on it. Someone had planned it. The programs are all fantastic, pretty much all our centers. So I really feel I appreciate our community even more now, having, seen the sharp end of things.
Which is why I think the name for this podcast, the Khoja connection,
Yes.
I think the connection element is so important within our jamaats, bringing people together, learning from each other, being inspired by people like yourself who has served the community for so long. So what does connection mean to you?
I think connection is the unique bond we have as Khojas with each other. And it's unique because we have a very similar background. I mean, what connects someone from Minnesota to Mumbai, it's now getting harder, I think. And I think we're losing it with language as well. We have a big issue there in terms of language going out the window, which I think will be a long-term issue. But at least at our generation, we understand that Khojas have certain values, that we are a religious community, that we're an entrepreneurial community, that we focus hugely on education. There are some values that we have as Khojas, which I think are really, really wonderful. We have great biryani as well.
Of course, we must have one of those.
Absolutely. But I think
occasions.
We have a problem in the future again here, a challenge,
Yes.
you could say, because obviously language is very important and that is now being used less.
Yeah, I think we both know my father's really into preserving the language and Gujarati being our language. But like you said, a lot of, it's going to be a problem because a lot of youngsters now are not able to speak Gujarati. Partly because we live in a country where, you're not living with grandparents anymore and you're not living with a bigger family. So the parents are struggling with, inculcating those languages at home. But it's not impossible. I think that's not too late. I always say it's never too late. So hopefully we can still keep some element of the culture and the values as Khojas. What's one myth about being and working in the community you would want to debunk, would you think?
That's a good question. I think it's not all about politics. People do feel that it's very political. I actually don't think it is. In that, the 8.5, 9 years I was Secretary General, only the last 6 months was a nightmare. The rest of it wasn't. People aren't as political as we perceive. Organizations don't have agendas as people perceive. And there is a lot of opportunity for meritocracy. So people who work hard, who really have visions, who really want to get stuff done, they can get stuff done. Opportunities are there. So I think the myth of politics, lack of opportunities, I think it's more of a limiting belief than a reality.
Yeah. What are 3 tips or 3 advice you would give to someone who really wants to get involved in the community, but is hesitant and they just need that little bit of a push to get involved? Just start something, start in any level.
I think first follow your why. Follow why you want to do it. If you have a particular thing you want to do, say you want to inspire people, you want to educate people, you want to make a change of some sort, then do it. Don't follow it. Follow your inner instinct and your inner beliefs, because you can and will make that difference. I think secondly, it's always good to have others to work with you. So if you have a team of people coming in, it makes things easier. We had that at World Federation. We had a team of like-minded youngsters, and that makes it a lot easier, a lot more fun, a lot more relaxed, and you get a good bouncing board as well. So I think the second tip is like-minded people. Make it, you go further together than you do alone. I think that's the next point. And the third point, I think the third tip is be open to listening, because look, it's not only your perspective. Nobody knows everything, and therefore it's important to listen and to understand what others' needs are as well.
Okay, listen to others' needs.
Yeah.
What is that? How did you manage to do that?
So ultimately, we're there to serve.
Yeah.
Well, we could say we're in leadership positions, but ultimately you're a server, as it were, at a different level.
Yeah.
And so you're there to serve. And I have a firm belief that we're here to serve our 12th Imam. That's why we're doing this. So we're here to serve our 12th Imam, and we can do that by serving other people, other creations of God. And that's what we need to do. So if we're serving, then we need to know, why are we serving, who are we serving, and what are their needs?
Yeah.
So there's no point pushing an agenda if we think it's right. It's more important to listen to what they need. And for example, in World Federation, you've got such a diverse community. So you've got India to North America, totally different needs. And you need to be able to understand and listen to their needs, and then to help.
Even within Europe, we have different needs.
Absolutely.
The fact that we have Jamaats in different parts of Europe, speaking different languages, French, Swedish, and English, obviously, and so on and so forth. Already there's different needs within Europe. So obviously, on the world level, it's even bigger. It's interesting you mentioned the concept of servitude. It seems like people who come onto the kursi, they call it, the power, they somehow get really attached by the power or the kursi.
Yes.
What is it about this that people are, and how is that different from serving? I mean, surely when you come into the position of leadership, you're there to serve. So you are supposed to be the lowest in that, you're serving everybody.
Yeah.
But somehow there's a belief that means now you're more powerful and you're a boss rather than a leader.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen leaders of all types. Some people who really want to be in that position. And then there's others who don't. I remember Anwar Uncle. Anwar Uncle is someone who didn't want to be a chairman of WF or a chairman of AFED. He's not attached to so humble. He's not attached to the seat. But there are others who really want to be in a particular position. I think we just need to look at ourselves. Like, why are we doing this? And I think it's important always to take a bit of a check as to why are we involved. So it could be, for example, even now, like if I'm involved in the Jamaat EC, am I really adding value? If I'm not, it's better to let somebody else do that and support from behind. But at the same time, I feel new people should come through. So say, for example, you've been a chairman of WF for two terms. I think you're done. And I think you really should accept that you're done. And someone new should come forward. And by constantly getting new people, we get new life, we get new breath. And I think that's really important for organizations. I think people have to give at all levels, but then they need to also move forward as well.
But it's that detachment.
Yes.
Being detached from so it's not, people are not looking up at the person, but the position. Yes.
And as you know, the seat doesn't carry the power. The power is in yourself and your ability to influence and your ability to make change. Whether being in the seat or not, I don't think it makes a big difference. But that's a different level of understanding.
That's a very pertinent conversation. I think that we all have to understand that when we come into such a position of honor, it's we're serving, we're giving back. And we need to remember that, because I think often we forget.
Yes.
And that comes from a variety of reasons, but it's nice when we have people who are serving, who are role models. We need role models. All of us are looking up to people that we've served. Who is your role model? Who was your mentor?
It changed from time to time. So when I was very, very young, obviously I started at 18, 19. At that time, it was people like Mohsen Uncle, Dr. Hassam was very involved, Yasin Rahim. These guys were involved. I mean, Yasin Uncle spent a lot of time with me, and he brought a group of young people in together. And that was something really, really quite amazing. But I think my role models would have changed, and they're different in different circumstances. Your dad is one of my role models, a really brilliant, amazing person. I think the likes of Anwar Uncle in his humility and humbleness, he's definitely a huge role model. And there are many, many others out there as well who I look to and I'm like, wow, these are really amazing people. I think what drives me is to see kindness now, not to see power. I'm not very interested in power or money. These things come and go, but the kindness, the ability to give, the detachment from wealth, the detachment from the seat, these are really amazing things. And it's important to look at people and see them for who they are. And you get that with time and experience.
Yeah, I think in a role like this, you get to know people. You get to become a little bit of a human behavioral expert,
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
Because there's a lot of things that upset you, a lot of things that trigger you, a lot of things, but it's really teaching yourself the ability to self-manage and to see beyond what the issue is, so what the conflict is. And I think you talked about kindness. I think compassion and kindness is something perhaps we need to embody a little bit more as leaders or as human beings, really, isn't it?
Absolutely, 100%. Absolutely.
Excellent. And in terms of, we just turn a little bit our attention to now business. Has your involvement within World Federation impacted your personality as a businessman?
Yes, I would say definitely in terms of like confidence and exposure at a young level. Absolutely. I think also conversely, it took a lot of time away from the more formative years as well, and focus, because I think focus is very important in business. When you are focused in a particular task, you can end up achieving it a little bit faster, a little bit better. But at the same time, I think overall, I am very grateful for the communal kind of experience that I had, because I think it developed me tremendously as a human being. It developed all of my various skills, whether it be interpersonal skills, public speaking skills, my ability to read people and understand situations. That's massively been supported in terms of my business experience now, which is completely different to community work. Ability to make decisions, lead teams, all of that has been very, very, very beneficial. The only thing is the time. And the way I always say, it's easier to give money than to give time. You can give money, move on, make it again. Time doesn't come back. So I think a lot of years went in, but alhamdulillah, I am so grateful for that experience. And it has helped me tremendously.
Absolutely. And you're an entrepreneur. You are leading a very well-known pharmaceutical company. Tell me more about that.
So we do different things. So we are obviously we're in the retail pharmacy space, in the real estate space, and then we have a wholesale business, and then we have a vet wholesale business, and then we do different things in Africa and other parts of the world. So it's interesting. It has ups and it has its downs. It keeps me on my toes.
But I'm sure there's so many transferable skills, like you said,
absolutely.
Because even in business, you still have developed as a person. So there is that element within you of who you are or who you've become through these challenges that has helped you with making connection in the business world as well, with, like you said, public speaking, talking and connecting with people. So that must have been a huge upside for you.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I would encourage our young people to get involved in community, because it does develop you. As much as you feel you're helping others, in reality it also helps you as well. You may not see it immediately, but you will improve so many skills that will help you, that are lifelong skills.
Yeah, it's a win-win.
Absolutely.
It's a win-win. Absolutely. So, I mean, tell me about a couple of lessons you've learned through your journey. It's been an amazing journey. I've been so blessed that I've heard all of it today, I think, most of it today. But what are the lessons you've learned through maybe some of your failures or some of your challenges that can be helpful to anybody who's listening to this podcast and maybe resonating with you?
So I think first of all, the ability to have teamwork. So you're working with people in community work, particularly leadership work. It's not your own way. We are democratic. You could even say overly democratic organizations. So you have to work with people and kind of building relationships with people, finding commonalities, common interests is really, really important. So I think in any leadership role, even a voluntary role, that whatever you do, you have to have that ability to work with people. And that means to understand yourself, your strengths, your kind of areas you need to improve upon, and then find commonality with people. Building rapport, for example, building relationships, very, very important. I think secondly, time management. I learned this, how to balance your time. And I think I was poor at this at the beginning and much, much better now. How to protect your own personal time. And that's something you develop over a period, because when you're altruistic and you want to help other people, that means you end up putting yourself last or your family last. And that's really, really bad. So I think time management and balancing it out is also really, really important. That'll make it a marathon, not a sprint as well. You'll get many more years doing community work if you're able to balance it out rather than doing it, in a kind of rush. And I think thirdly is enjoy the ride, because it will be a ride. There'll be ups and downs. I mean, at that World Federation SG level, there were a lot of ups and then some serious downs. And you see people in a different light. But at the same time, you need to enjoy it. This is how life is. This is how human beings are. We always sometimes, can have amazing features, and then there can be some conflict. And this is how life is. And we have to enjoy that ride as well.
I think we grow through conflicts.
Yeah.
There's a growing process there. If we see conflict as something I don't want to go through, and I know a lot of people who don't want to be in controversial situations or in difficult conversations. I think we haven't learned, or we haven't been taught how to have difficult conversations. But I'm sure through your journey you would have learned that, actually conflict has helped you grow
Absolutely.
as a person, and
Absolutely.
helped you see what to say to whom and when to say it, how to say it. It's a whole, I'm sure you can do like a whole course on that.
I'm sure, yes. A whole conflict management, conflict resolution.
Exactly. No, it's a very important point, actually, conflict management. Shan E Abbas Hassam, what's one question I haven't asked you yet?
I don't know, actually. I think you've asked me such a variety and range of questions.
Anything that you want to share with our viewers today?
No, not really. I think like most controversial is why we left World Federation. Why did we resign in one day on a Teams call? I think that would be the most controversial. I'm thinking most interesting question.
Absolutely. So I'm going to ask you the question.
Go for it.
Shan, why did you leave the World Federation?
So you probably know that we resigned on a Exco Teams call with the whole world watching and me in tears. And I remember that really well. I think we just simply had enough.
It was that time when you were online, wasn't it?
That was it. Yeah. I was staying at your house. I came back afterwards.
Yes, I remember. Yeah.
You're like, I thought I saw you like upset on this Teams call.
You switched off your camera at some point.
Yes.
Okay,
I was called crocodile tears by some. But yeah, basically, look, I think we had hit that wall. So look, we were quite clear that the election, we didn't really care who came, because we're leaving. So it's like passing on to whoever comes forward. They can select who they want, and anyway, the grassroots will vote and they'll select whoever has the best campaign and the best credibility and so on. And so, particular person won, and then they kept saying, well, the election was badly run, but we had a fantastic electoral commission. Mujtaba Badat was an absolute marhum now, but absolutely amazing person. And I had a conversation with him to say, look, our OBs feel we need to get this double checked, so we're going to go and ask a barrister to check all this and tell us if it's okay or not. And then the barrister came back and said, yeah, it's fine. This would be vexatious and frivolous and so on. So we also had a solicitor. So we're trying to explain to the Exco that it was fine. And if you want to annul this, you want to cancel this, you don't have the power, but conference, the higher body, does. And they kept coming up with this concept of, no, Exco has the power, conference doesn't, the higher body doesn't. And we're like, that doesn't make any sense. And we're trying to explain it again and again, but it just wasn't coming through. Of course, later the court case found that we were right on this particular point. But at that point, I was like, if we can't get our point across, and Anwar Uncle can't get this point across, and they're simply not wanting to listen to us anymore, then we leave. And I think that's why we left. It was quite sad. It was really not the way to leave after so many years of service. But I think we all felt that we had given it our best shot, but we were hitting our head against a brick wall. And it was then time to leave. And at that point, Lorraine, to be honest, I didn't want to do community work again. I think I took a whole year out from community work.
To heal from this.
Yeah, I think I needed that.
It
was tough. It was very, very tough.
I remember you were very down at the time.
Yeah, very
And
tough.
I think these are things that people might not know, that sometimes it does get you down.
Yeah.
But seeing you today back into the swing of things, what made you come back?
So I just love the community too much.
Yeah.
I just can't get out of it. I think for a year, I went and hit the gym. I lost a good number of kgs, focused on work.
You went onto a mindset reset.
I needed that. I think it was great. It was great learning and great growth. And I think I rebalanced myself from that. I'm back. And I'm still at World Federation. I'll be honest, the president calls me now and again for some advice. I give it to him straight away. Other regional presidents do. I give them my thoughts. But I had the benefit of not having to sit on any seat anymore, which is fantastic.
So you get best of both now. You're a lifetime advisor.
Yes, without
the commitment,
absolutely,
the time that you give.
Absolutely.
Plus, you're not paid for it, so
Absolutely.
you just give back out of your own will. So
exactly.
it's amazing. Well, that's wow, very interesting episode. I do remember that episode. Yeah.
Yeah.
But alhamdulillah, it's been fantastic
talking
to you, Shan, today. Thank you for being vulnerable, for sharing with us things that people wouldn't normally know. And I think it's important that everybody knows what goes on into the life of somebody who's given so many years into the community, but still staying in the community despite the ups and downs. You've shared so much about the lessons learned. What my biggest lesson that I've taken away from what you've said is the balance that you spoke about, being careful about your time, who to give it to, how to give it to, and how to make sure that each part of your life is balanced. Having a team. I think that was another big one as well. Teamwork makes the dream work. I've seen that as well. And I think that's a very, very good lesson for anybody who's planning to come into any leadership position or just helping as a volunteer as well, getting into that. You've shared so much with us, and I do hope people have taken a lot away from your experience. Experience like yours is invaluable, and we need more of you. And if anybody wants to reach out to you, would you be open to helping out, with anyone who's having maybe a little bit of a doubt, they just need a bit of a push?
Yeah,
would that be okay for them to get in touch with you?
That would be a pleasure, absolutely. I think there's one more point I completely forgot, was to really, and it's because it's connected to you, it's probably less so I should say it, but it's important to say that how lucky I am to have the family I have. Like, my wife has been so supportive through that journey. Because, when you're 25 years old and I think I got married and in the same year became Secretary General. I think, or maybe it was a year, I can't remember now, but that kind of level of support, it's very rare to find that. So I'm very lucky.
Absolutely. I think that behind every successful man, there's an amazing woman.
Yeah, and the other way around. And the other way around.
Yes, but I'll say it this way. Because she's my sister. So no, alhamdulillah, you've got a wonderful family, and I think the support system is very important to get into a position like yours.
And I'd be more than happy to help. If anybody comes forward and wants support or help,
absolutely,
it'll be great.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Shan.
Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum, dear viewers. This is the Khoja Connection podcast, growing through conversations. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. This is run by KONNECTION, and press the notification button so that you can get all of our podcasts. And they are one after another, amazing, exciting conversations.